July 1st, 1863, just west of a small Pennsylvania town called Gettysburg, a Union cavalry officer, John Buford, is staring down a Confederate force that has him massively outnumbered. His orders are broad: scout the area and screen the Union Army's approach. But as he scans the horizon, he sees it, the high ground, the key to the entire battlefield. His commander is miles away, and waiting for new orders will mean losing that ground, and maybe the battle itself. So Buford makes a decision that will echo through American history. He decides to fight. That decision is the difference between winning and losing. It's the difference between a team that can adapt and a team that freezes. And it's all powered by a leadership philosophy that is more relevant to today's businesses than ever before: mission command. I'm Richard Bragg, a retired 28-year combat veteran Army officer. I have a master's degree in military history and over 10 years of experience leading teams in the business sector. I want to bring that experience to you here in Battlefield to Boardroom, a channel devoted to showing how your business can benefit from lessons learned on the battlefield. If you like this type of content and want to ensure you never miss an episode, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Now let's get to it. At its core, mission command runs on one deceptively simple rule. The how is left undefined, but the why has to be crystal clear. A leader practicing mission command doesn't hand down a detailed playbook for every situation. They don't dictate the method, the steps, or the process. What they do instead is communicate the mission's purpose, the intent, the desired end state, the why, with total clarity. Then they trust the people closest to the problem to figure out the how on their own, even when the plan falls apart or the situation changes faster than orders can travel. It's a philosophy built on trust, shared understanding, and decentralized authority. It exists because battlefields and business environments are chaotic and move faster than information can travel up and down a chain of command. If the leader is the bottleneck for every decision, waiting for permission becomes a recipe for failure. The opposite of mission command is what so many of us deal with every day: micromanagement. Micromanagement inverts the formula. It's obsessed with the how, detailed instructions, rigid processes, approval required for every small decision, while the why often goes unexplained. The micromanager believes they can, and should, control every variable from their office. So what happens when a leader gets this right? And what happens when they get it wrong? To answer that, let's go back to July 1863 and three officers who all faced the same test on the same battlefield. The first day of the Battle of Gettysburg was pure chaos. Two massive armies, the Union's Army of the Potomac and the Confederacy's Army of Northern Virginia, stumbled into each other almost by accident. In this fog of war, with battlefield reports traveling at the speed of a horse, the fate of the nation came down to three critical moments and the decisions of three very different leaders. First, you have Brigadier General John Buford and his 2,700 cavalrymen. Marching towards him were several thousand Confederate infantry. Buford's orders from the Union Army commander, General George Meade, defined the why with total clarity: find and hold a strong defensive position. But they said nothing about how. Looking at the hills around Gettysburg, Buford saw that the high ground, Cemetery Hill, Culp's Hill, and Cemetery Ridge, was the most valuable real estate in the county. If the Confederates got there first, the Union Army would be forced into a disastrous uphill fight. Meade's orders never said, single-handedly hold off the vanguard of Robert E. Lee's army. But Buford wasn't following a checklist. He was executing intent. So Buford made a choice. He spread his small force thin, using his dismounted cavalrymen with their fast-firing carbines to create the effect of a much larger infantry force. His goal wasn't to win, it was to buy time. He just had to hold the Confederates back long enough for Union infantry to arrive and secure that high ground for good. It was a huge risk, taken on his own initiative, but it was guided by a deep understanding of the mission's ultimate why. He was a proactive leader who didn't need to be told how to do his job. Now, let's jump to the next day, July 2nd. The Union Army now holds that high ground Buford saved, forming a defensive line shaped like a fishhook. At the very tip of that hook, the extreme left flank of the entire Union Army, is Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain and his 20th Maine Regiment. His brigade commander, Colonel Strong Vincent, gives him a simple, brutal order. Hold that ground at all hazards. That's it. No detailed plan, no contingencies, just the intent. This line cannot break. And almost immediately, things go wrong. For over an hour, Chamberlain's men fight off wave after wave of attacks. As the Confederates probe around his exposed flank, Chamberlain bends his line back on itself, company by company, into an angle, refusing the line to keep from being surrounded, all without a single order from above telling him to do it. Then their ammunition runs out. His line is wavering, men are falling, and another Confederate assault is forming. The method he was given, hold the line with rifle fire, is about to fail. A micromanager would have frozen or sent a messenger back begging for instructions. But Chamberlain, understanding the intent, that this flank could not fall, did something no order could have ever planned for. He yelled, "Bayonet!" and led his men in a desperate downhill charge that slammed into the surprised Confederates, shattering their attack and saving the Union Army. He was the adaptive leader, a man who, when the plan fell apart, invented a new one on the spot to get the job done. But there was a third decision maker, and his story is more complicated than history often gives him credit for. Back on the evening of the first day, the Confederates were on a roll, pushing Union forces back through Gettysburg. Their commander, General Robert E. Lee, saw the same opportunity Buford had. The Union Army was retreating to Cemetery Hill. He sent word to his subordinate, Lieutenant General Richard Ewell, to take that hill if practicable. If practicable. What does that really mean? Was the hill worth a major risk, or just a target of opportunity to grab if it was easy? Lee never said. And Ewell wasn't just being timid. His men were exhausted after marching and fighting through the town all day. Any assault meant funneling troops through narrow streets under fire. His units were tangled and disorganized from the day's fighting, and he had intelligence suggesting Union reinforcements might be threatening his own flank. Faced with a vague order and a genuinely uncertain picture, he did what a lot of reasonable leaders would do when the why isn't clear. He hesitated. He weighed the risks, talked with his staff, and waited for more information. And while he waited, Union soldiers on Cemetery Hill dug in, built fortifications, and brought up artillery. The window of opportunity slammed shut. By the next morning, the hill was a fortress. Many historians argue that this may have cost the Confederacy its best chance to win the battle, not because Ewell was a coward, but because an unclear order gave a careful leader no reason to move fast. The difference between Buford and Chamberlain on one side and Ewell on the other wasn't about courage. Buford and Chamberlain both had a why they could act on without waiting for permission. Ewell didn't, and even a competent, experienced officer defaults to caution when the intent behind an order is fuzzy. That's not a character flaw. It's what happens by design when mission command isn't executed properly. Lee's if practicable order is a textbook example of failed mission command. It wasn't a clear expression of intent, so Ewell couldn't know how much risk Lee actually wanted him to take. Because the why was fuzzy, he defaulted to the safest option, doing nothing. A vague order created hesitation at the exact moment that speed and aggression were needed most. So what does a 160-year-old battle have to do with your job today? Everything. Today's business environment, with its fast-moving markets and remote teams, looks a lot more like the chaos of Gettysburg than a predictable 20th century factory floor. Your competition just launched a new feature. A crisis is blowing up on social media. Your team in another time zone has a critical question. If you, the leader, are the bottleneck for every decision, your organization will be too slow. You'll end up with a team of Ewells, not cowards, just reasonable people left with no clear why to act on. The principles of mission command offer a better way. It breaks down into 4 key actions for any leader. First, communicate the why. Don't just give your team a to-do list. Explain the purpose behind the work. What is the ultimate goal? What does a win actually look like? When people understand the larger purpose, they can make smart decisions on their own. Second, push authority to the edges. The person closest to the problem, the developer looking at the code, the salesperson talking to the customer, usually has the best information. Trust them and empower them to make decisions. Don't force them to run everything up the flagpole. Third, build trust. Mission command is impossible without trust. You have to trust your people to do the right thing, and they have to trust that you'll have their back, even if they make a mistake. This doesn't happen overnight. It's built through shared experiences, open communication, and leaders who defend their team. Fourth, accept prudent risk. Empowering your team means accepting that they won't always get it perfect, but the cost of a few small mistakes is almost always lower than the cost of an entire organization that's afraid to move. You have to be willing to trade the illusion of perfect, centralized control for real-world speed and adaptability. Leaders who obsess over controlling every how create Ewells. They build a culture of hesitation and dependency right when speed and initiative matter most. But leaders who arm their team with clear intent and then trust them to execute create Bufords and Chamberlains. They create teams of proactive, adaptive problem solvers who can seize the initiative and win, whether they're on a battlefield or in a boardroom. The choice is yours. If you want more breakdowns of how lessons from history can help you lead your team and win in your field, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.